All right. We should now be live. We just skipped right to it because we have to drop a little of the bells and whistles this week. But let me just make sure that all is well here with our broadcast and that you all can see and hear fine. So let me get this going. Yes, you can. Okay, good. So I am going to be happy and live from Denver. It is Friday night. Hey, critics. Welcome to Critical Conversations. I am joined, as always, or almost always, by my beautiful wife, Melissa.
Hello.
Who we are very, very happy to have with us this week. Yes. Okay. So, hey, Sacramento. Hey, everybody. Yes, Critical Conversations Friday night. I do apologize in advance for not having a call-in line. I actually took the phone line off the screen as well. Because the board, the sound board that is required in order for me to be able to take phone calls is at the shop for repairs. It did get sent in. I sent it priority and all that, but they, at Memorial Day weekend, I think, kind of cut across my ability to get it back this week, and so it's going to be coming back to me fully repaired and replaced or whatever next week. So we should be back to battery fully. Next week. And Red Pill, your advice is well taken. I understand that I should have backup systems and things in place. And this last 2 weeks has been a return into tech land for me, figuring out all the right settings and getting the cables organized and setting the place up better so that I was fixing things that were not correct and the lights and everything else. So it was a good thing to kind of get goosed on this. And ultimately, you guys are the beneficiaries of better broadcasts, and we bumped up our internet bandwidth and all that here so that we could deliver a better show to you guys. So there are actions being taken behind the scenes here, and just to throw it out there, because I don't know that it's going to come up in the comments here, but we are entirely fan funded. I rely on you guys, my critics, to keep this channel and the shows that I do going. I don't have external income or something else I do. This is what I do, and producing this content and doing my interviews and videos and all of that for you guys. So anyway, so that's kind of the current state of things. I just wanted to give you a little quick update on that. And yes, thank you guys for your wonderful acknowledgments of finishing my master's degree. I very, very, very much appreciate that. It was 1.5 years in the making. It was a lot of damn work, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Literally. Mm-hmm. It was rough. I wanted to say again to you publicly, live on air, that there is 0% chance I would have made it through that program without your help.
Thank you.
Yeah, and support. There's 0% chance.
Oh, look at that.
Oh, R.R. Smith, thank you very much. You are very, very welcome. I'm glad to see you on the show here today. So anyway, I wanted to also, just make publicly make that clear. This lady right here, I owe a tremendous amount to as my partner in life.
Well, look at that.
Yeah. Oh, thank you, Sandy. Thank you very much. You guys are awesome. Absolutely awesome. Thank you. Yes. And I tell you, a lot of this does get reinvested in what we're doing here. All right. So thank you very much, guys. All right. Let's go ahead and get on with our show points. And the first one being you and your quote of the week. We are going to get to Tom Cruise, and I'm going to tell you guys some stuff about Scientology I've never talked about before, so I am positive you guys are going to enjoy this, but one thing at a time.
Yeah, so I was looking up stuff about ego because of Tom Cruise, so I like this one. It is amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit, and that's Harry S. Truman.
What an interesting quote. I have never heard that.
Yeah.
What an interesting quote. That is dead on right. That is so interesting when you kind of get the ego out of the room, Good job. Good job. There's this.
Uh-oh.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. Thank you for that. Got a little PayPal donation there,
neat.
so thank you. You guys are just the best.
You guys are.
Yeah. All right. Good quote.
Thank you.
Yes. Okay. So, so what did you before you met me and had reason to, despise Tom Cruise for the Scientology stuff? What was your take when a Tom Cruise movie came out?
I mean, I liked the first Mission Impossible. I thought it was a fun movie, but I was also in junior high or something, or when it came out, middle school. So, but I was never one of those girls that was really that into him. I knew girls that were, but I was like,
Never fully under Tom Cruise's
yeah.
spell.
And then I started finding out about the Scientology and stuff, and I was like, this guy is ridiculous.
Right. Well, he is, and there is, in short, there is. Wow, we got a lot of viewers here. This is great.
Boy.
There is an ego problem with this man. Now, I'm looking at Tom Cruise before the show. I'm checking out the latest media and all that on the guy, and you see the Wikipedia page, you see the IMDb page, you see the long and truly distinguished career of movies that he's made, right? He's a movie maker. That's what he does. He doesn't write books. He doesn't produce other kinds of entertainment. He makes movies. And he predominantly is all about being the center of attention, the center of all action, and he's all about being an action hero. And he's even at his advanced age now, he's I think pushing 60 or 61 or something. He was born in 62.
It'll be 60, yeah.
Yeah, so he's he's still out there doing that, and and what am I gonna say? Top Gun Maverick has produced, I think, $170 million or something in the last week. It's this runaway, box office blast, and everyone loves Tom Cruise. I took some time in the week to, I'm kind of getting my feelers back out on social media. I'm back on Twitter. I've been on Reddit for a little bit, just kind of messing around there, not really doing anything serious. And Twitter, I'm pretty much just using to share my work, comment on a few things here and there, but I'm not going to be getting as deep or involved in it as I was before. Tried to set up a Facebook page, by the way, today, and somehow ran into my old account blocking it, or whatever, sort that out. Whatever. Anyway, getting back out there, and I went on one of those fanboy, everybody gushing and orgasming over Tom Cruise. Went into one of those threads rather than the Scientology one, and dropped some truth bombs about what Tom Cruise is up to. And of course, the response was, of course, somebody had to be that guy. And continued in that vein with, yes, we all know this about Tom Cruise, but he still makes these wonderful, entertaining movies, and you just sound like a hater. And I'm like, you want to know why, cults get away with what they get away with, why Tom Cruise, why beautiful people, why Amber Heard, if we're going to go there, can get away with what they get away with is because of their looks, because people look at that, these beautiful people. And this is a factor. It's not the only factor, but it's one of the factors, right, is that they are fooled. They are so deceived, right, by this beautiful outward appearance, or worse, they're simply entertained. Well, he entertains me, so what do I care? I'm able to separate that. All the celebrities are horrible, awful, evil people, which they're not.
No.
Right? All of these guys have something wrong with them. What's your problem, right? And it's suddenly your problem for pointing out, hey, this guy actually uses slave labor. Slave labor. Let me say that again. Slave labor. That is what Tom Cruise in his personal life does. I happen to think that is, egregious. I happen to think that is criminal. I don't happen to think that this is somebody who entertains me when I can't get that out of my head looking at the guy, right? Kevin Spacey was given as an example back to me as, well, what are you going to do? Stop watching The Usual Suspects? And it's like, that's kind of not totally my point.
No.
It's why do we continue feeding this monster?
Right.
Not what, when we didn't know. And when you can look back at the work and separate it from the artist, I don't have a problem with either one of those things. But now that we do know, and now that we are faced with these truths, and yet we still can't get this guy to take our money fast enough, right? If you wonder why Tom Cruise might have the ego problem that I'm going to break down here in the show, where that comes from, well, it doesn't just come from Scientology, although you're going to see there's a whole lot in Scientology feeding this ego. But there's also just the sort of silent complicity of the, celebrity media and the movie-going public when it comes to this stuff. And I'm not even trying to shame everybody. I'm really not. It's not even about that for me. It's just, Jesus Christ, what's it going to take? What's it going to take? When does this guy have when does this guy's career actually get impacted by the fact that he's a monster and he engages in slave labor? When does that happen? It's like
Well, Travis, their Red Pill 3000 has a good point.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point, Red Pill. That's right. Slavery was only wrong when it was practiced during a certain time period in America's past. Yes, that does seem to be the case. So anyway, not going to belabor that point. We got other things to get to, but I did want to rant a little bit there because that is personally, like, as an ex-Scientologist, ex-Sea Org member, somebody who's seen behind the curtain, understands that picture, has lived it, has been, has been labor trafficked by the Church of Scientology, right? My labor was forced for years against my will, really. It's not comfortable or pleasant or fun for me to watch, screaming millions adoring people who actually create that situation, right? And that's what I have to say about that. But we have other things to go into here because I thought you guys, you might have noticed lately, I've been talking a lot more about current Scientology events and things that are going on in the church because there's news coming into me from people inside the church or recently out, like the interview I did with Catherine last week, which you guys will be seeing more of next week. I have another surprise for you tomorrow. Yeah, another surprise. You guys aren't going to see this one coming. So you're going to like tomorrow's podcast, and that's actually all I'm going to say about it right now. But you've noticed that I've been talking more about current Scientology events and inside Scientology baseball, right? What's going on in the church right now. These are because these sources are coming forward and informing me what's up, and it's been fascinating. And one of the things that I've been diving into and talking to some of these folks has been more about the OT levels, the operating Thetan levels, the upper levels of Scientology. Tom Cruise is an OT7 completion, probably finished OT8, which is the highest level you can do in Scientology. I believe he's OT8. I know for sure he's an OT7 completion. So, or at least that's what I've heard, right? So whether he completed it or whether he's still on it, everything we're going to go over here applies 100% to him and to every other high-level OT Scientologist. And this is a level of, this is its own kind of, or type of, I guess we could say brainwashing, right? Mind control, the sort of like mental conditioning that goes on in Scientology. I didn't really fully appreciate until just a couple weeks ago in interacting with some of these folks, just how psychologically damaging and personality altering the OT levels in Scientology are. It is about this. Well, let me break it down a little bit as to what this is, how Scientology works. If you all don't mind. How are we doing on the... doing good? All right.
The Depp and stuff.
Yeah, Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Lots of opinions on that one. I happen to have a little bit of inside knowledge on that one, and I am definitely gonna say I'm
Team Johnny.
Team Johnny. Yeah, that's kind of definitely where I'm at. But I'm that way because I have knowledge I can't really share with everybody about that. Okay, so Scientology now. There are two halves of Scientology, you could say, the lower levels and the upper levels. And I'm always using hand gestures and stuff to talk about this stuff. I don't know why. Scientology has this ascendant master thing. You're climbing levels of indoctrination. And in Scientology, they think of these as levels of awareness and ability. And as you ascend this tower or bridge, as you cross this bridge, you are achieving higher and higher levels of spiritual awareness and ability. This is how it's described. But what does that mean in brass tacks? Well, what it means is that L. Ron Hubbard said in 1950 in Dianetics that you have this evil part of your mind called the reactive mind. It's a subconscious mind, and yet it's always active. It's never not operating. But it really comes to the fore, and it really comes out when you are experiencing moments of pain and unconsciousness. And those are called engrams. And we're not going to do a test on this. I'm not going to throw a bunch of Scientology lingo at you. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum. But this reactive mind thing's kind of important because it's the source of all your trauma, all your stress, all the problems you have mentally, physically, come from this reactive mind, this storehouse of pain and trauma and stress that you carry around with you. And at the lower levels, this is what's communicated to you in Scientology is this is your problem. This is what's wrong. This is what we need to handle. We need to get you to what's called the state of clear. And the state of clear in Scientology means you no longer have your own reactive mind. And that's a very curious phrasing to Scientologists who are not yet on the OT levels. You no longer have a being who no longer has his own reactive mind. Well, then whose reactive mind do you have? What is that supposed to mean?
Yeah,
right? I don't have my
sense.
own, but
Yeah.
do I have somebody else's? Well, as a matter of fact, turns out you do. Turns out that the entire script gets flipped on you when you get to this level of clear, because the idea is that without a reactive mind, without all that storehouse of stress and trauma and pain and unconsciousness and all that stuff that you've been carrying around with you for all these years, you, happy little spiritual entity called a Thetan in Scientology, should be totally good to go. You should be ready to rock. You should be back to what's called native state, where you are a god. You are like a Greek god of power. You can draw lightning bolts. You can, build planets. You can do whatever you want, right? It's all on you. That's what it means in Scientology to be returned to native state, or to be, this new state of clear. Wow, I'm clear. No longer have this impediment. And it's supposed to be the fact that the reactive mind is actually the source of a whole bunch of your physical travails too. So you get rid of this reactive mind, and you're not supposed to have leukemia or bad eyesight or, gout or anything, cancer, all that stuff. All of that stuff is supposed to be gone when you're clear. That's the promise made in the book Dianetics.
Right.
And people ate this up, right? In 1950, oh my God, this is amazing. Give it to me, give it to me.
For some reason, even though there's people
Right.
dying and getting cancer, they still kept going with it.
Yeah. Well, here's why, right? What you're handling when you're dealing, what Hubbard then developed or came up with as an explanation for, well, why is it that you can get rid of a reactive mind and be clear? And they stabilized this thing called clear in the 1960s. So it was like, we can make anybody clear. We go bop, 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 boom, you're clear, right? Spiritus, spuminus, spaminus, and you no longer have a reactive mind. And this was pretty nailed down, and they were pretty happy about this, and people got, pretty hepped up and hyped up about this. And this was the big, thing up to the 1960s. Is Hubbard spent most of the 50s and the beginning part of the 60s working this whole thing out and ironing it out so that he had something that people would finally accept as a state called clear. And it was not what he described in Dianetics, where he said you'd have full memory recall of every single thing that ever happened to you. You'd never get sick. Your IQ would go up. All this folderol that he claimed, that all kind of got parked. And what came out, what emerged, was this idea of charge. Charge. You're carrying around with you as a spirit electrical charge, right? Your body has an electrical force field around it. And this force field is impacted by the charge that you're carrying around with you from all this stress and trauma. So you deal with all that stress and trauma. You desensitize or decharge. You get rid of that charge. You erase it all. No more charge. But then Hubbard clearly hasn't solved all the problems of the world. Clearly hasn't worked out everything, right? And this level of clear, by the way, was quite a little thing in itself. It was quite the little mindfuck, right? Because it was Dianetics, it was all these promises, it was all this ability you were supposed to have. And yet people go clear, and then clearly they don't have all of this. Well, what's the explanation? OT, right? Now you've run into what's called your OT case, right? This whole bundle of stuff that you didn't have any idea existed all this time. You thought you were messed up just because you had a reactive mind. Well, we erased your reactive mind, and guess what? Suddenly you're getting bombarded by all these other reactive minds, all these other pictures and thoughts, right? Oh, I should clarify something. When you go clear, you're no longer supposed to have pictures. Because all these pictures, when you close your eyes and think of a cat, if you imagine a picture of a cat, one you've seen before or something you imagine, you're not supposed to, ideally, be thinking about pictures. Pictures are sheets of energy in Scientology, and you're not supposed to be carrying around energy with you. That's baggage. That impedes you. That gets in your way. So if you're still thinking with pictures and words and thoughts and voices in your head, something's wrong. Because Hubbard says that once you're back to being a happy little Thetan, a happy little spirit, all those pictures and voices and thoughts and everything are going to be gone.
That sounds kind of boring.
Well, yeah, it does. Kind of impossible too, but very much so. But people get really excited about this because then it's supposed to be, Hubbard promises and lays out, that you're going to be able to simply pervade something and know. You just know. A Thetan knows. This is a standard Scientology phrasing, right? File clerk is gone. That's all part of the reactive mind. That stuff all disappears when you erase the reactive mind. Those are all just machines and stuff that exist there. So, okay. Now I'm drawing a logical kind of line through something that is in all kinds of books and lectures and crazy things, and there's all kinds of other stuff we could throw into this mix. But I'm trying to just do this kind of logical line through this as best I can, okay? I'm not discouraging questions or comments. I'm just trying to point out what I'm doing here today. So this business of charge becomes very important. You're trying to handle charge. And what you discover when you get on the OT levels is you're carrying around charge that's coming from other entities, other Thetans, called body Thetans. And they are stuck to you. This body that you're carrying around with you is kind of created by your ability to perceive it. And don't even ask me to explain that, but somehow it's in there. Your ability to even perceive your body and have pictures and have thoughts and all of that is coming from these BTs that you've been carrying around with you. All the way back from the Xenu story. 76 trillion years ago, 75 trillion years ago, 75 million years ago.
Okay.
Here on Earth, right? Called Tegeak. We all know the story, right? Xenu brought trillions of Thetans to this planet, blew them all up, put them, in this sort of semi-conscious comatose state, and they clustered. And the big reveal of OT3 is not that Xenu did this horrible thing. It is that they clustered. That all these Thetans, these trillions of beings, independent entities, right? All with personalities, all with their own history, bopping around in the physical universe for millions and millions and trillions of years. Well, they were all gathered up in this one place, and they were all blown to shit. And they got knocked so hard that they basically got knocked out. And you and me are the ones that managed to kind of keep our shit together enough to at least stay awake and keep going and go eventually slither off and find a body to occupy. And here we are, life after life after life, 75 million years later. God, I hope this is all making sense. So you were clustered with other entities. They all gathered around you. And you can imagine that you are now this multifaceted entity. You are not just you. You are you with thousands of entities glued to you, possessing you, whatever you want to call it. And their thoughts, pictures, and ideas and charge is yours. Or at least you think it is. Because you don't know they're there. What? This is the big reveal. What? They're there? You didn't know they were there. So all their thoughts and ideas and crazy stuff you thought was yours. You ever have those weird conversations with yourself? Right? You ever have those? And this is all bullshit, by the way, right? But this is how it gets sold to Scientologists, right? Is you ever have those weird thoughts in your head that you didn't know where they came from? It was a BT.
Oh, my God.
Right? You ever have impulses that just don't make any sense at all? That's a BT.
Sure.
Right? You ever have purposes or desires or goals that you just feel like not really yours, it's somebody else's, and you got to just do it, and you feel obligated to do it? That's a BT. But you don't get that reveal until you get to the OT levels. At the lower levels of Scientology, you're being told the entire time, you don't know about these BTs. You're being told it's all your reactive mind. Get rid of your reactive mind, all that goes away. But then you get the bait and switch. That's basically what it is, right? You get to the OT levels and they're like, surprise! You thought you had one reactive mind to deal with? You got thousands, baby. Get to work. And that's what auditing on the OT levels is all about, is it's about spotting and handling these body Thetans one at a time, which is why you got to go in session as an OT 5, 6, 7 times a day, every day. Every day. Every OT is expected to go in session at least 2-3 times a day. You're doing one session a day. You are a slack OT. You got to get in there, man. You got to audit these things. All right? Taka, let's go. And see, up until now, up until fairly recently, that's about the extent of how much I thought about this, right? I knew this much. I'd read enough materials, talked to enough OTs. Okay, this is what you're doing on the OT levels. You're getting rid of these body Thetans. You're contacting them, somehow waking them up, doing whatever you're doing with them, and sending them on their way. Mm-hmm. And then they're expected to go get a body, go be a Scientologist, whatever they're going to go do, right? It doesn't really matter. You don't hear from them anymore. They're gone. They're not attached to you anymore. They're no longer clustered to you. Well, there's a few more details about this that get right back to Tom Cruise and get right back to all OTs in Scientology. Because one of the first things that I wrote about, even before I was making videos, and you can find this way early on in my blog, is how Scientology creates narcissists. Creates them. And I was always a little unclear on how it was that you could go about creating a personality disorder in somebody of that magnitude. I'd experienced it myself. I had my own touches of narcissism. I'm absolutely the first to admit that. It took me years to even realize I had an attitude problem, much less that I was a little full of myself, right? And it's been a long, road to, kind of getting back to, bringing myself down a few pegs and not being so, conceited all the time when I'm talking to people. That was a feature, that was a side effect of Scientology. And so I wrote about that early on because I could see that was a problem, but I didn't really understand how it was created totally. And I didn't do the OT levels, and this is not the only way that narcissism is encouraged or produced or created. But this is pretty big. At least I think so. And that's why I'm sharing it with you guys today, is that when you're contacting these body Thetans in session, you are sitting in a room silently by yourself with an e-meter and some paper. And the cans you're holding in one hand, you got a pair of cans in one hand, and you got a pen in the other hand, and you're keeping notes of what you're doing, and you've got your auditing instructions here, and the cans are kind of in your lap or on the table, and you're watching the needle. And the needle and the e-meter is what guides you to what you're doing. And as long as the needle's moving around and bopping around or whatever, people are like, yeah, this works. This is the proof that OT levels are real, and this is all the deal. Because look, the needle moved. I mean, it's that stupid, right? Oh, a needle moved. Well, it's true then. Xenu really happened, right? I mean, it's like pretty low bar of evidence there, right? But that is where OTs are at. They've literally told me that themselves.
A lot of evidence, yeah.
No, I mean, they told me that themselves when I was in.
Okay.
I had one OT woman who was a staff member tell me, yeah, I read that OT. She didn't tell me anything about it. I didn't know about it, but this was as close as she could get to telling me about it. She said, yeah, those OT3 materials, man, they're going to blow your mind. I was a little bit like, oh, I don't know about this. And then I went in session and the e-meter responded. So clearly it must be true. I mean, those are almost exactly the words she said to me, right? So it's like low bar of evidence, right, for this. But this is how it works. They go in session. Now, when you're contacting a BT, this is the part that blew me away, is a body Thetan is an independent entity. It's a spiritual being. It's a personality. It's got its own history. It's got its own experiences, its own viewpoint, right, theoretically? Because this is all bullshit. When you contact a BT, you are contacting it on the basis of what it is being in that moment. And somehow, these BTs are not just little independent entities. They become representations of the problems and stresses and issues that you're having in your life right here and now. And what I mean by that is, let's say you go in session, and this is just a random. I'm just making this example up, but as an example, you go into session, you're on OT7, let's say, or OT3 or whatever. You're going to find one of these BTs, and you're having, let's say that you are upset about me, Chris Shelton. Somehow you've heard about me, I'm out here making all these nasty videos against Scientology, and you're a diehard Scientologist, and you think I'm just an SP and I suck, right? And Chris Shelton's just, and the word they use in Scientology is natter. They natter. He just natters. Natter, right? So you're sitting there, Chris Shelton, nattering about Scientology. You're an enemy of Scientology. You're an enemy of mankind. I'm going to go in session, and we're going to see about this. And you find a BT, and that BT represents Chris Shelton's natter. Somehow you're identifying on the meter, and I won't get into the technical procedure of this, but you do a little dance with the e-meter, and the needle's dancing around, and you get that what does this BT represent? And it represents Chris Shelton's natter. And you deal with the BT by doing the little process to send it on its way. And by doing that, you think that I, in the real world, am actually going to stop nattering.
Huh.
Right? You from a distance have affected me, right, through this BT thing. I cannot, for the life of me, with all the Scientology I know, and unfortunately I know an awful lot of it, I cannot reconcile the logic of how that's supposed to work. But every single OT accepts that idea.
And once again, it's like people didn't stop nattering, but yet.
And that's where the crazy making stuff comes in. Exactly there. Because you do go into session and you do handle Chris Shelton's natter, or my wife's confusion, or my son's discipline problem. It can represent any kind of problem, stress, trauma you're having. And it doesn't have to always be personal to you. I'm just pointing out that it's not just considered a little entity. It's considered something representative of something significant to you in that moment. And therefore, you believe that by auditing this, by getting rid of this, you are decharging this sector, this problem, this issue in the real world. You are handling some aspect of it, what they would call in Scientology N theta. You're converting that to theta, to good stuff. You're taking that bad energy and turning it into good energy. And thereby actually making it go away in the real world. And if you go out into the real world, and here I am still nattering, well, there must be more BTs to find that represent my natter, see, because I'm still going. So we haven't quite found all of them yet, or we haven't quite dealt with all of the suppression and N theta connected with Chris Shelton yet, and we're going to have to keep going. And you just keep going, see? And of course, I never stop. So after a while, this could become a problem for the OT in viewing that it's not going away, and yet it's supposed to be going away. And it's not just my natter. Of course, it could be some personal problems with them. It could be discipline problems with their kids, right? Here you are going in session every day as the dedicated, loyal OT7, and you're not talking to your kids. You're not, disciplining your kids. You're not communicating with your kids. You think you're going to handle your kids by going in session and talking to yourself in a room with an e-meter. And you're going to blow all these BTs that represent all these horrible things, and they're all going to go away. Okay, so I think you guys get the point with that. The narcissism comes in not only from the empowerment that a person feels, because sometimes, coincidentally, those problems do go away, or they stop hearing about them, or something affects or changes it. And it's one of those points of remember the hits and forget the misses. You glom onto those successes as an OT. See, it worked. It worked. This guy stopped nattering. I found my keys.
Oh, God.
I got the job. My wife got the job, right? Coincidences, things that happen because people are working for them, or through, confluence of influences, things occur. Surprises happen. And the OT, when the good things happen they want, always assign their own causation. I'm the reason for that. I went in session and I handled some things that made it so that you would get that job, honey. Mm-hmm. And you don't even necessarily say that much, but you're the reason she pulled that off. You're the reason that, the storm passed over Clearwater that day and didn't hit the Fort Harrison. You're the reason for shit that happened had nothing to do with you. But you think you can validly, legitimately take credit for it. For years I've talked about when OT8 came out, Scientologists went nuts over the Berlin Wall coming down that same year, because they said it was because of OT8. This is why. It's because you go in session and they believe they're affecting things far beyond the confines of the auditing session. And yes, this is extremely ego boosting. This is incredibly empowering for a person who's in this delusional mindset that they're doing it. And finding all the reasons, remembering all the hits, and forgetting conveniently all the misses. Oh, you didn't get the job. Well, maybe you have a little bit of an ethics situation, baby. Right? Oh, you didn't get the job. Maybe they're, or maybe they're out ethics for not hiring you or something, right?
It's their fault.
But it's some, it's some other thing, right? It wasn't me. It wasn't because
No.
I was doing everything I could, right, to get you to get that job. But
Yeah.
I guess you just kind of got in your own way on that one, right? This is how they'll talk to themselves, right? Okay, now this is not all. There's more. But this aspect is kind of important because it gets OTs into this frame of mind where they are truly delusory. They start interpreting world events and things that happen around them as though everything has to do with them. See where the narcissism starts coming in, right? It's all about me. Me. I'm the one who did it. And it's all hush-hush, right? It's all super secret confidential. We don't talk about it. So they don't run around going, ha, 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 I'm the reason for this. I'm the reason for that. Or at least they don't do it like that. But what they do is they start doing things that are really, 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 really off the rails. And justifying it because they think that everything they're doing is right merely because they're doing it. The reason that you can get into that frame of mind is not only because of the BT stuff, which is powerful. And remember, we're talking multiple sessions a day, every single day. You are not allowed to be on an OT level and not go in session every day. So this becomes a just a routine part of your life. Okay? You don't get to take a break from this. At least not if you want to keep being a Scientologist and doing Scientology. But there's another aspect to this too, which is we have talked at length about the fact that there's all these hoops you have to jump through and sec checks you have to get. And you have to reveal all this stuff about yourselves, and you give over to the Scientology all these secrets. Well, you do, and they write it all down. And every single public person who goes up the bridge to Scientology has to go through that route. It's called OT eligibility, right? And you have to routinely get rechecked on your OT eligibility. They are constantly policing your life to make sure you are an ethical being. Now that has the whole negative thing that we talk about all the time of, having to, it's very, they interrogate you. It's very abusive. It's kind of traumatizing all by itself. They make you do all this amends, and you have to pay all this money, and you got to buy their books, and you got to go spend hours doing, amends projects, passing out Hubbard literature in the street and all that to earn the right to get onto the OT levels in the first place, or to stay on them once you've gotten on them. I really can't emphasize enough how many hoops you have to jump through over and over and over again to prove to the Church of Scientology that you are a loyal, dedicated, hardworking earner who deserves to be receiving these OT levels. This is a constant thing. When you're on OT 7, every 6 months you got to fly physically back to Clearwater to get re-eliged.
Wow.
Right? It's called a refresher. And every 6 months, without exception, right? And they'll take you off the level and punish you if if you're not going to follow those rules. And remember, OT7, by the way, is something that takes people years. Remember, OT7, once you get to that point, it's years in the making. I never met anybody who was on OT7 for less than about 3 or 4 years. And I met some people who were on that level for 10 years. Right? So every day going in session, right? So that's its own level of stuff. But here's the unintended or the reverse consequence of all this sec checking and all this ethicsing and all of this amensing and all this work you're doing. You feel like you've been through a ringer and your shit can't stink anymore. It can't. Look at all the stuff you did. Look at how ethical you are. You're checking all the boxes. You're hitting every beat. You are taking responsibility for the entire planet, for the entire galaxy with the auditing you're doing every day. right? The empowerment here, right? The feeling of self-confidence and the goodness, the inherent goodness of yourself rises to a level where you don't any longer doubt anything you're doing. You believe through your auditing and through the work that you've done in Scientology that you have removed all of the wrongnesses out of your universe, out of your head, out of your life. They're not there anymore. You've dealt with all of that. So you are now this supercharged, super powerful, ethical being, and you flip the script on ethics, where you're the one who determines what's ethical or not in the world. Nobody else can tell you what's ethical. You know. You're the Thetan. You're the OT. You're the one handling all the bullshit of the world. All these other people are just making it. They're just contributing to all the bullshit of the world. This is how Tom Cruise looks at the world. Every interview he does, every person he talks to, every actor he's on set with, this is how he thinks about them. They're the problem. He's the solution. I really can't emphasize enough the power of this kind of thinking when it is conditioned on a daily basis in somebody's mind for years through this OT auditing and this whole process I've been talking about. And I have a quote for you from somebody I've been in touch with about this who described this very, very clearly and gave me permission to share this with you. I think OT is where that repression comes out. Like up to OT, there are all these expectations, and you have to go through so much to get there and prove you're ethical and get everyone and their mother to say you're clean enough to go on. So once you're there, it's sort of this, okay, I'm good now. I've handled the charge. So if I feel like doing something, it must be okay and ethical, because if it wasn't, I wouldn't feel like doing it.
Oh my God. Wow, that's great. That's a great excuse.
Right? Like you kind of trust yourself now that you can do no wrong. And then that backed up repression comes out and opens the floodgates, and you feel like you're kind of infallible. I think that's why OTs go kind of nuts. Like you're finally trusting yourself and your intuition, but everything's all messed up now, so it comes out that way. Because that's the real you. It was just suppressed and fucked with, and now you can just let it manifest. And it goes on to say, I realize that it may seem confusing, but that's what it was like for me. People will finally trust me no matter what I do or say, so I can finally be myself, even if it's not what people expect me to be. And if that's out pointy, if that's wrong, right, that reflects worse on Scientology and OT levels than it does on me personally. So that's the quote I wanted to share with you from one of the people I've been in touch with recently who has done OT auditing and gave me some insight into this, right? And I also went and talked to another person who I've interviewed in the past on this channel and kind of went over all this with her, and she was like, yeah, no, that's exactly what it's like. That's what happens there, right? And this is just not really talked about enough. And once I learned about this, I was like, holy shit, I got to talk about this. Because if you wonder why Tom Cruise has that maniacal laugh and does that maniacal stuff that he does and thinks he's invincible and infallible and can't ever do any wrong, and he definitely comes across that way. I mean, that's how I see it. And I've certainly had a number of other people look at Tom Cruise and make that observation, right? That you go, yeah, something's off here, right? What is up with that? Well, you want to know why you can maniacally laugh with Oprah and dance around on couches and think you can do no wrong, right? What was it that finally disciplined Tom Cruise and calmed him down? It was, literally the studios and the industry making it abundantly clear to him that he needs to shut the fuck up and stop acting so crazy. And you notice that, in the last 10 years or so, he hasn't said a damn peep about Scientology outside of Scientology events. He'll go to those and he'll talk and mingle and, still be Mr. Medal of Honor winner, Freedom Medal of Valor, I should say, right? and still be best buds with David Miscavige, but he ain't talking about Scientology anymore at all. And what, not very ethical OT, right? But again, you can spin anything.
Mm-hmm.
If this is your mindset, what I just described, and this mindset that I'm describing is an OT mindset. It also happens to be, if we're going to connect some dots that really matter here, it also happens to be L. Ron Hubbard's lifelong mindset. L. Ron Hubbard always thought he was the shit.
Mm-hmm.
He always knew he was the smartest, most important person in the room. He always knew he was the most talented writer in the room. And he let everybody know if they said something different. Right? He wasn't bashful. At the same time, L. Ron Hubbard was a tortured soul who hated himself and hated everything about his life and wanted desperately to fix all the things he knew was wrong with him, as we see in the affirmations. And when I talk about the sort of difficult, complicated nuances of L. Ron Hubbard, that's what I'm talking about, is extremes within the same personality. But L. Ron Hubbard invented Scientology and invented this ascendant master's bridge to total freedom, these levels, because he was trying to deal with his own crap. And by doing what he did and developing this system that he developed, he was the forerunner of this entire thing. He was the one who invented all of it. There weren't any other contributors to this whole solo auditing BT thing, not that I'm aware of. I mean, maybe there are, but we do know in the 70s, David Mayo came in and helped an awful lot with some of this in terms of how some of this ended up breaking down. So I'll correct myself. There were other contributors there. But L. Ron Hubbard is absolutely, positively, without question, the origination point of all of this. And his mindset from the very get-go was, I can do no wrong. Remember, if you want to harken back to Thelema, the magic, the Aleister Crowley magic system, which is called Thelema, do what thou wilt shall be the total of the law. That's a Crowley quote. You can look that up, right? That's what the occult, as interpreted by Aleister Crowley, that's what that was all about. It was about self-realization and actualization and making yourself into this kind of God. And Hubbard just oh yes, this is it. And Hubbard added the additional wrinkle of he needs followers. He needs his name to never be to never not be spoken, because that's immortality. And that's what Scientology really is all about. But he's creating little clones of himself with this system, right? Dedicated, loyal little clones. So you get these genie, ultimate power, ultimate ability, and yet slaves to L. Ron Hubbard, because they owe everything to him. Every single gain, every single realization, every single thing they ever get, they have to credit L. Ron Hubbard, and of course now David Miscavige. So all of this comes together, I hope, clearly into a picture where it's just concentrated narcissism in a bottle called OT. Here's the OT levels. Drink up. Guaranteed narcissism. And think of all the dopamine hits. Think of all of the, right? Remember that whole addictive nature of auditing, how it's all about those, getting those pleasure moments, those, oh, wow, I blew up planets 75 million years ago. Yep. Oh my God, wow. Right? I can't believe this. That's why I hate my mom, because she killed me in a past life. Oh my God. I mean, these kind of, wow, right? These sensational moments that people have in their auditing, or sometimes reading L. Ron Hubbard's works, right? And they just go, oh my God, this is fantastic. I can't believe this. You mean we were the clam? What? Well, this is crazy. So, so that 5, 6, 7 times a day, every day, feeding this monster, right, called your ego. I mean, how would you possibly go through something like that and not come out the other end with your head,
Way up there.
Yeah, so big, so big you can't even get out of the damn room, right? That's what's going on those OT levels for every one of the people doing them. And it also helps make it more understandable. Why do these OTs engage in credit card fraud, insurance fraud, bankruptcies? Why do they just go right off a cliff into bankruptcy? Why is it that OTs cheat on their spouses more often than other Scientologists? I'm telling you, they flip the script. At the lower levels, they got to encase you in amber. You just can't move. You can't do anything without thinking you're doing it all wrong. And you're just terrified, right? And that's most of Scientologists. The very few Scientologists actually get to these upper levels. But when they do, look at the reward that they're getting in terms of the dopamine, serotonin hits, and the pleasure that they're experiencing from this, so much so they get so giddy, so out of control, so delusory that their life goes right over a cliff before they realize what's even happening. And that's why I think now it finally all clicks for me and makes sense why OTs routinely are going so off the rails in Scientology. And we see them on Tony's blog featured all over the place there, right? With OTs committing insurance fraud, going to jail, high level Scientologists. What do they have in common, right? A lot of these guys are OTs. So that's Tom Cruise. In a nutshell, right? It's everything kind of wrong with him. Because the fact of the matter is that Tom Cruise was a real get-up-and-go kid who got really, really, really excited about getting into the movie industry, got some lucky breaks, and made it big. And then Scientology got hold of him, right? And he was already like one of these, go-get-em kind of guys. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with being a go-get-em kind of guy. But you feed the ego of somebody like that who has this string of lucky breaks, does well in the movies, manages through his career early on to connect up with good quality directors. He would not have the career he has right now if he had not done that. It was a very smart career move, whether he made that decision or his agent did or what. I don't know. But working with the likes of, Dustin Hoffman and... just the long string, right, of Scorsese and Reiner and Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, you look back at the movies he made through the 80s and 90s, and you see some real heavy hitters there involved in those movies. And Cruise going along for the ride, learning the ropes, seeing how it works, right, and building himself up. And slowly through the years, tuning his movies through the night, definitely into the 2000s, into being all about nothing but him. It's all about him now. Every single one of his movies focuses exclusively and only on him and his greatness and his wonderfulness and him saving the day and him coming to, be the thing, right? And of course, that's the role of the hero in a movie. But I happen to think that he takes it even with the hero's journey, as described, right? And as we all know, I think he takes it, to this egotistical level that really is just, I just can't watch it. It's not, the whole slave labor thing has got its own problem with me. But then I just don't like the content anymore because it's just so powered by his ego, right? And that's Tom Cruise in a nutshell, right? He's the ultimate epitome or expression of this in Scientology. He still is, to that degree, or in that sense, the poster boy for Scientology. And there you go, right? Yeah, Collateral, actually, good point. Collateral was a nice break from that because that was a good chance to work with Michael Mann. Right, he went back to that earlier formula of working with good directors. So,
all right.
Yeah, so there you go. All right, guys. Those are all the things I wanted to kind of break down here for you. I hope this all made sense. Certainly got me thinking about all kinds of things and the psychological consequences of this, because I think y'all know that's kind of how I think about this stuff, like pretty intensively now, is really from a psychological point of view. and reevaluating this whole structure from the point of view of how is it morphing people? How does it change them? And when we call it a destructive cult, what is it destroying? Well, it's not just destroying your bank account. It is literally destroying your soul. That's what it's doing. So pretty powerful stuff. So there we go.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise's ego
is huge.
Yeah, it is. And it would take a long ass time for that guy to get over that.
Deflate it.
Yeah. I mean, when people say, why, is Tom Cruise going to, ever leave Scientology? I'm like, why would he? Why would he? Of all the people in Scientology who are benefiting, he's the closest one to somebody who is getting as many benefits out of it as David Miscavige is. So, why would he stop? And there you go, guys. Thanks for coming around on that. We should end as classically as we do with our critical thinking cards. So we're going to do that. Pick a card, any card, dear.
Optimism bias. You overestimate the likelihood of positive outcomes. There can be benefits to a positive attitude, but it's unwise to allow this to affect our ability to be realistic. Ironically, if you're making more rational judgments, you'll actually have a lot more to feel positive about.
Well, okay. Don't be too optimistic, folks. And this could, let me see this. Yeah. This could be my problem right now, just so we all are clear on this in terms of the downfall of Scientology. I am super excited right now about the stupid moves Miscavige is making. You guys are going to hear more about that tomorrow in the podcast, a lot more. So I hope you're ready for that. But I could absolutely be accused of optimism bias right now. I totally own that, right? I hope that things keep going the way that they are going right now with Scientology because it's sort of accelerating its downfall. But let's see what happens. All right, guys. I will see you. Catch the podcast tomorrow, and I'll see you on Q&A on Sunday. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.